Hi, this video is going to be an overall look at Fenway Park's designs. Now, this is going to focus on some of the overall history and basic facts about Fenway, and it's also going to break down some of the positive and negative design aspects of Fenway as a whole. So, with that, let's get started. Now, for a short overview of the park, Fenway Park is located at 4 Jersey Street, Boston, Massachusetts. Fenway is arguably one of the most iconic American ballparks ever. It's a site of so many iconic moments in baseball history, and not even just baseball history, but also American sports history. Now, originally, construction broke ground in Fenway in 1911, and it officially opened in 1912. So this year marks the 108th year of operations at Fenway, which is astonishing considering the overall age of the park. That at 108 years, it's still running and going strong. Now, the original architect of the park was James McLaughlin, and McLaughlin played a major part in some of the design choices for how Fenway was going to be laid out. Now, the park is not an exact replica of how it was in 1912. There have been some accommodations and changes made to the dimensions of the park and some of the aspects of it, like lighting and original structures that had to be changed due to the age of them or just the need to have better amenities as the years went by. Additionally, if you would like more information on Fenway Park that I'm not probably going to go into this, if you can check out www.mlb.com/Red Sox/ballpark, and you can find all kinds of great facts and directories about Fenway. If you're looking to travel there, I would highly recommend it. It's one of the greatest stadiums I think you can go to as an overall sports fan, just with all of the history and iconicness that the stadium has. So, the first thing that I would like to focus on is some of the unique aspects that make Fenway so iconic. So, on the left hand side here, we have Pesky Pole. Pesky Pole sits in right field of Fenway, and it's named after Red Sox Hall of Fame shortstop Johnny Pesky. Pesky was well known as a contact hitter for many, many years, and in 2006, as an iconic member of the Boston Red Sox, they had a ceremony to officially name the right field foul pole Pesky's Pole, due to how iconic he was for the team and the fact that the few home runs that he hit in his career, he hit in Fenway Park around the foul pole in right field. And it's a nice living, touching tribute to his legacy as a Red Sox player, as well as to the future history of the Red Sox as well. As you can see on the picture on the left of Pesky Pole, you can't make out most of the signatures on the pole, but they're covered in just almost every single player that played in right field for the Red Sox and so many other iconic players that have came through Fenway Park through their careers have signed their name to this pole. And it's this kind of postage stamp of just history of baseball over the years that Fenway's been there. And then another super iconic part of the park is the green monster in left field. It's one of the strangest outfield walls I think you'll ever see in any ballpark. It stands at an incredibly tall height. It's known a lot for robbing players of home runs if they're not able to hit it over the massive height of the wall, and it's very short length from home plate to that left field wall being 310 feet. Now, on the right-hand side, you can see the overall park dimensions of Fenway, and this is where Fenway really is unique and iconic, is that it has the most non-traditional layout of a ballpark that I have ever personally seen, and I think every person that will agree with you. It's the most non-conformist ballpark in the history of baseball. Uh, like previously mentioned, the Green Monster is only 310 feet from the home plate, but it stands at an incredibly high height, making it a home run robber of sorts. And then to center field, there's also another iconic part of the park that I don't have listed on this slide as a picture, but uh, what is known as the triangle is the center field part of the park where The somewhat normal center field line dips out into a sharp angle that creates the aptly named triangle of the park, which lies as the deepest part of the field. Now, in right field, at the 302 mark, that there lies the pesky pole, and pesky pole is another really tricky aspect of the outfield to play around due to the weird structure of the outfield wall and how it sits at a strange curve instead of more of a sharp line like a lot of other stadiums have. It makes it really hard for players to play in it, but it creates this very iconic look that Fenway's known to have. So, moving forward, I'd like to talk about some of the positive design points first of Fenway. Now, one of the things that really jumped out to me was how Fenway is easily accessible from public transit. I think that's one of the best things that an area can have for its stadiums is having good public transit that makes getting to the stadium a lot less of a hassle than other areas. Now, the picture on the bottom right corner there, that's of Lansdowne Station. So Lansdowne Station has served as one of the main stations for fans to commute into Fenway. It lies off of not on the. It's not exactly right at Fenway Park, but from where lies, it's a short walk, a couple blocks across to get to Fenway. And it was originally built in 1988, and it served originally as just a special service route to get to Fenway Park. It originally did not have a general everyday use outside of being an access point for fans to commute and get to the stadium. Nowadays, it serves as a full-time route as well as being also a major stop for game day at Fenway. And I think having public transit is such a great aspect because if you've ever been to a game before and you've driven yourself and decided to park, it's such a hassle to fight traffic just to get to the game, find a parking spot, then go all the way to the stadium, and then proceed to have to walk back after the game and then fight traffic to get out of the stadium in town if you live outside of the major area. Now, another aspect of Fenway that I think is very iconic and is actually a great aspect of their design is the nature of how they've built in uh, so much history into the ballpark. Now, like I previously mentioned, Pesky Pole is a very iconic piece of Fenway, considering not even just the aspect that it has on the stadium's look and whatnot, but it serves as a literal uh, a, a written statement of the history of Fenway, with all those players' signatures on there. You're going to find a lot of iconic names and Hall of Famers and some of the most iconic players over the decades and decades that baseball played at Fenway. In addition to this, another one of the most iconic spots in Fenway is pictured here in the top right. You have the Lone Red seat. And the Lone Red seat in center field at Fenway Park marks a 502-foot home run from Ted Williams, one of the most iconic Red Sox players of all time, and arguably one of the greatest baseball players of all time. And this marks one of his best home runs ever and one of the most iconic home runs at the stadium itself. And it kind of serves as this great little memento piece of living history of where this is the actual seat where Teddy Williams hit a 502-foot home run. And also, there's a chance that you can get that seat. That seat's opened as a public ticket thing. You could sit right there where literal history was made. And I think this is a really underrated aspect of a park's design that I don't think a lot of people put a lot of thought in. I think if more teams took the culture and the lore and history of the franchise and integrated that into the actual stadium, I think you would see more stadiums revered as iconic as Fenway is. Because the Red Sox have done such a great job of bringing in their team's history into the design of the ballpark and creating this great mystique around the ballpark itself, making it such a destination that you have to go to as a fan. Now, looking at the more negative side, Fenway does have some problems. Granted, a stadium at 108 years old is going to have problems, unfortunately, due to the age of the stadium. But Fenway's problems I find minor compared to its overall positives that it has. Now, the overall problem that Fenway has is it has, compared to the market that the Red Sox play in Boston and the fandom that the team has, their overall stadium capacity is rather low compared to a lot of other big market teams in the MLB. Now, I'm going to talk about that further at a later point. But the thing that I want to focus on right now is some of the smaller but still annoying problems that the seating has, and that's obstructed viewpoints. Now, the largest point in Fenway of where obstructed viewpoints are going to be a problem is in the grandstand seating. Now, as you can see on the photo in the bottom left, you can see the grandstand roof that supports another level of seating and also provides some limited actual coverage for fans from weather and whatnot is supported by support beams that run right in the middle of seating. Now, as you can see in the in the front part of the picture, this is what this situation creates. While having that roof is great, it creates this situation now where fan seating is obstructed by this support beam, and it makes well, your experience at the park is really going to be bad if that's your seat right there where that group of three people are. You're not going to be able to see home plate. If you look where they're sitting, their only view is if they turn their head out of their seat, and they can kind of see the third base to second base line and out into the outfield, and that's about it. And that would be a really bad experience as a fan to have. And additionally, not as severe as the grandstand seating problems, but right field also has an obstructed view with the way that pesky pole is positioned kind of forward in the park compared to a lot of other parks designs. It's not as bad of a blockage as the grandstand seats have in some points, but it's still going to block your view as a fan sitting in right field from seeing some of the other points of center field and left field and the outfield, depending on your angle. Additionally, another problem with right field seating is that in some parts, due to the nature of how Fenway's strange park dimensions lie, some of the right field seats actually don't sit, at least the orientation of the seat of where your view right in front of you in a lot of stadiums would be across the outfield looking towards the other outfield wall. But in Fenway, in some spots, the orientation of the seats as a fan in right field, some of those seats, your front view is going to be facing the center field wall or facing the right field wall, and you're going to have moments where you're not going to be able to see the play happen on the other side of the field due to the fact that you would have to be looking across your body the whole entire time to see something happen in the infield or on the mound or in left or in certain parts of left field. And that's also another minor inconvenience, especially if you're going to be sitting there for 3.5 to 4 hours, depending on how long a game takes. It's definitely going to have an impact on how your experience is. Now, getting to my overall point that I brought up previously, Fenway Park, as of currently, only has 37,949 capacity of fans. Now, that's not terrible, but it's not great. And if you look at the surrounding factors, that puts them 26 out of 30th in the MLB for overall capacity at their stadiums. Now, for one of the biggest market teams in the MLB, and arguably one of the biggest and most loyal fan bases in the Red Sox faithful, having the 26 overall stadium capacity is a real hindrance on your overall ability to sell tickets. Now, sure, the Red Sox have no problem selling tickets as they are right now. There's a lot of sellouts and a strong history of sellouts consecutively for the Red Sox. They could have more and more. They could have, if they had the capacity to hold more fans, they could easily fill thousands more seats. But the problem is that they don't currently have that. And if looking at the teams below them, it's also the only teams that are below them are all smaller market teams like the Kansas City Royals, Miami Marlins, and the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, in that field is also the Cleveland Indians with Progressive Field, but the Cleveland Indians are more of a mid-market team than say the Rays or the Marlins. But it's very surprising, at least, that with as big of a market that Boston has for sports, that Fenway has a bottom fourth ability to hold fans. Now the question is that how can the Boston Red Sox and architects in the engineering groups responsible for the maintenance and renovations to the stadium increase capacity? And I ran into a big problem when I started thinking about this. Is that with how iconic Fenway is right now, with everything that it has, how do you make what would seem on paper necessary changes? Because in the case of increasing seating, you would have to tear down at least something that makes the park so iconic to accommodate for more seats. So whether that's a change in how the grandstand seating system works, of where it would be removing a section of the seating to accommodate for more levels, or it could be eliminating the green monster in left field to accommodate for a more traditional stadium slanted lower outfield wall that would allow for more seats? Or would it be removing the triangle in center field and accommodating with another strip of built-in center field seatings that could add hundreds to thousands of more seats? But the problem is that everywhere you turn in Fenway, you're going to have to remove something iconic to add a more modernized, higher capacity stadium. And that's the big problem, I think, with Fenway is that how do you accommodate the iconicness and all of the history that stems from the design of the stadium with the necessity the necessity to have updated seating, larger seating for higher game attendance and whatnot. It's a lose-lose situation, in my opinion, to make changes. Now, you can certainly make the changes by, say, like I proposed, tearing down the monster in left field and accommodating with a more traditional style of seating that extends into left field. But at the same time, you're losing such an iconic part of your stadium. Now, my conclusions on this, I think from a business standpoint, it would be do more harm to the Red Sox to change Fenway Park as it is now to accommodate for more seating than it would be to leave it alone. I think, sure, if you add more seats, you have more potential capacity, but at the same time, I think you burn a bridge with some of the fans of not only just of the Red Sox, but also just fans of baseball in general by changing something that's been around in a park that's operated for over 108 years. I think there's more to lose by changing what Fenway has than to keep things the way they are. And arguably, the Red Sox plan on using Fenway for a very, very long time. As reported in the Boston Globe and by the team itself, they plan on using Fenway till 2061. 2061, 60 more proposed years, 61 proposed more years in a stadium that's been around since 1912. And that's insane, but at the same time, I think that speaks to how iconic Fenway is, not even just to the city of Boston, but to baseball itself the great as like a great piece of American history and American sports history all in that stadium.